Have you ever found yourself in this exact scenario? You know the one. It always starts with something incredibly small. Maybe it's a text from your partner that just took a little too long to come back, or I don't know, a tone in their voice that felt slightly off. Maybe just a weird look they gave you at dinner that you couldn't quite decode. And then, before you even realize what's happening, boom, you are 3 hours deep into a mental spiral. You're replaying every single detail. You're constructing these massive theories and you're agonizing over an interaction that on the surface seems completely insignificant. Well, welcome to today's explainer. We are going to unpack exactly how to stop overthinking in a relationship, diving into some truly fascinating insights from marriage and family therapist Figs O'Sullivan. Let's get right into it. So, a late text, a weird tone, and suddenly you're spiraling out of control. Why does this actually happen? Well, let me just validate you right out of the gate here. Analyzing every single word, every pause, and every little micro expression. Yes, it is exhausting, but it is absolutely not a cognitive defect. You are not broken and you aren't just being irrational. When your chest tightens up and your thoughts start racing a mile a minute, what you're experiencing is actually a biological alarm going off inside your body. And that brings us to section 1, a biological alarm, because spoiler alert, this is not a thinking problem. To really understand this, we need a massive paradigm shift. You simply cannot apply a cognitive solution to a biological event. Overthinking is, at its very root, a biological event that's just masquerading as a thinking event. See, right beneath the surface, your nervous system is hardwired to constantly run two fundamental questions in the background of every close relationship, like apps running in the background on your phone. Those questions are you there for me and am I enough for you? These aren't just deep philosophical questions. To your brain, these are literal survival questions. Your brain is automatically constantly scanning your partner for the answers. And when the answer feels even slightly uncertain, bam, your threat detection center fires. 6, this number right here is everything. It represents the critical 6-second gap. Your amygdala, which is your brain's threat detection center, processes information 6 seconds faster than your neocortex, which is the part of your brain responsible for logic, reasoning, and rational thought. 6 seconds faster, meaning by the time you start consciously thinking about a problem, your body has already decided there's danger and deployed a full-blown survival response. And honestly, this brilliantly illustrates why standard advice usually fails us. We're constantly given cognitive advice, right? Just stop worrying or try positive affirmations or just journal it out. But the biological reality is totally different. When that survival alarm gets pulled, your prefrontal cortex literally goes offline. Trying to logic your way out of an overthinking spiral is exactly like trying to run a brand new software program on a computer where the hardware has already crashed. You just can't journal your way through a biological fire alarm, which leads us to section 2, the digital murder board and how we construct our case. Okay, so if our rational brain is offline when the alarm sounds, what actually happens when it finally comes back online? Well, it desperately tries to retroactively make sense of the sheer panic your body just went through. And this leads us to a fascinating concept called the story of other. Imagine your attention is a flashlight. When you overthink, you point that flashlight entirely outward, directly at your partner, trying to figure out who did what and why they did it. And let's be real, it's incredibly seductive to do this. It feels productive, like you're solving a puzzle. But focusing outward during a moment of attachment distress, it is always a dead end, because when you point that flashlight outward, you inevitably end up building a murder board. You know those cork boards in true crime shows with the creepy photos and the red string connecting all the evidence? Yeah, that is exactly what your mind is doing. O'Sullivan shares this amazing example from his practice. A woman watched her husband make a single cup of coffee just for himself. By the time she arrived at therapy, she had literally connected the dots from that one single cup of coffee to complete existential abandonment. Her nervous system translated, "He didn't offer me coffee," into, "I'm utterly alone." She assembled an entire mental case just to prove her worst fear was true. And today, the smartphone is our ultimate digital murder board. Think about it: checking active statuses, rereading text messages for hidden subtext, monitoring social media activity. It provides infinite data, but absolutely zero context. A phone is not a source of truth about your relationship. It's really just a magnifying glass for your attachment wounds. Every single time you scan your phone for threats, you are just throwing fuel on the spiral and training your nervous system to be even more hyper vigilant. So, how do we actually fix this? Let's get into section 3, the 75-25 somatic boundary. To stop the spiral, we have to move our flashlight inward. We have to make a pivot from narrative to data. Think about the story you tell yourself. "They don't care about me." That story is highly unreliable. But contrast that with the actual biological data your body is providing you in that moment. "My chest is tight and I feel scared." One is a completely fabricated story. The other is tangible, real information you can actually work with. Your body is your barometer. The crucial point here is implementing what's called the 75-25 somatic boundary. Here's how it works. When you're interacting with your partner, keep 75% of your awareness on your own physical body. Focus on your breath, your heartbeat, maybe that tension creeping into your shoulders. Only 25% of your awareness goes to the external interaction. Now, for a chronic overthinker who is usually spending 95% of their time focused entirely outward, this ratio is radical, I know. But keeping the vast majority of your awareness inward is exactly how you keep your instrument for reality properly calibrated. Let's break down some actionable steps to practice this in real time. First, anchor before engaging. Take 30 seconds to just feel your feet on the floor and establish a physical baseline. Second, maintain that 75-25 ratio. When you feel your attention naturally drifting out to analyze your partner's motives, gently pull 75% of it right back to your chest and your breathing. Third, name the sensation. Say to yourself, "My stomach dropped," rather than jumping to, "They don't love me." And finally, speak from the body. Saying something like, "I feel tight and scared right now," invites connection. Saying, "You never think about me," just invites defense. Moving on to section 4, stopping the spiral. Let's talk emergency protocols. What happens if it's too late? What if you're already 3 hours deep into a massive mental spiral and your digital murder board is fully assembled with red string absolutely everywhere? Well, here are your emergency steps to break the loop. First, name it out loud. Literally say to yourself, "I am in a spiral. This is my attachment system." This engages your rational brain just enough to crack the loop, then drop into your body with slow, deep breaths to hit the biological brake pedal. Next, consciously separate the literal facts from the story you're telling yourself. And then comes the absolute most important rule of all: wait to talk. Under no circumstances should you ever start a conversation while in the grip of a survival brain alarm. You will only prosecute your partner, they will defend themselves, and the loop will just tighten. Once your nervous system has actually settled down, then you can ask the real question. And there is an incredibly satisfying aha moment here. Think about the difference between a prosecutorial question driven by your anxiety story, something like, "Why didn't you text me?" versus a vulnerable question driven by your body's actual data, like, "I'm feeling a little disconnected. Are we okay?" You're still getting down to those core survival questions. Are you there for me? But you're doing it through vulnerability, which produces a vastly, vastly different outcome. All right. Section 5, intuition versus pattern. How do we trust our body? Now, I bet a very common fear might be popping up for you right now. Okay, but what if my intuition is actually warning me that something is genuinely wrong in my relationship? The answer to that lies in the body, not the mind. Notice the difference in energy here. Overthinking has a very specific, frantic, looping, desperate energy to it, and it always requires you to build a complex case about your partner's motives. True intuition, on the other hand, it's a quiet, steady knowing in your body. It doesn't escalate, and critically, it requires absolutely no case to be built. It's just there. Using that 75-25 boundary helps you physically feel the difference between panic and knowing. And hey, if you find that this frantic overthinking is a constant background noise in every single relationship you have, I want to gently validate something for you. This hypervigilance. It likely started in childhood. Scanning a parent's mood to stay safe was a brilliant adaptive survival tool back then. It literally kept you alive. But today it is outdated software. Your nervous system is detecting threats based on a really old map. Which brings us to our conclusion, healing the wound and updating that software. Let's bring all of this together. The core takeaway from today's explainer is that relationship overthinking is a biological response, not a logical flaw in who you are. When the amygdala fires, the rational brain scrambles to solve it, and the loop begins. I want to leave you with this deeply hopeful quote from Figs O'Sullivan regarding this hypervigilant scanning behavior. He says, "That's not a flaw, it's a wound. And wounds, unlike character defects, can heal. You are not broken for overthinking. You are just running a protection system that worked beautifully for a very different time in your life. And now it just needs a software update." And that brings us to our final thought. The problem was never in your head. It was always in your body. So the next time you feel that familiar chest tighten and you feel the powerful urge to start building a murder board, I want you to pause and ask yourself, where will you point your flashlight next? Outward at the story or inward at the data? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I truly hope this empowers you to put that 75-25 somatic boundary into practice. Catch you next. If you want to work on this for real, try Figlet, my AI relationship coaching app. You can start for free, no credit card needed, at figlet.empathy.com.